Hello YouTube, today we are going to go over some facts and details about the Kokiri tribe, Kokiri forest, and the Great Deku Tree. Oh, and the Lost Woods, so yeah, the whole Faron province in general. But yeah, welcome. So here are about 40 facts about the Kokiri and their home village. Now, what makes the Kokiri forest and the Lost Woods unique is the strange particles that float in the air. These strange particles can also be seen in the Wind Waker. This could very well be the Great Deku Tree's magic flowing about through the area. Maybe. Every time Link successfully hops across the slabs in the pond by the shop, he will gain 5 rupees, but you already knew that one already. If Link chops down the sign near the pond while facing the water, the sign fragments will fall into the water, making a splashing sound effect, and they will float. This behavior received a special mention in an interview, and is likely an Easter egg, as to program the splashing and the floating, the developers would have to put in, extra time to program this into the game. The Kokiri Forest exists in the Faron Woods in Twilight Princess and in Skyward Sword, and as the Forest Haven in the Wind Waker. Did you know that there is a training center in the northern section of the forest, where it is said that the Kokiri sword lies hidden? The Kokiri Forest is part of the Lost Woods, but it became a safe haven because of the Great Deku Tree's magic. The Kokiri tribe have only appeared in 2 games till this date, that being Ocarina of Time and The Wind Waker, but they are referenced in many other games as well, such as in stories or as the Koroks. The Kokiri were once Hylians themselves, since they do have the pointy ears and everything, but back in Hyrule when people were getting settled in, the Kokiri just chose to live closer to nature and distance themselves from the growing cities. The Great Deku Tree is considered to be a patron deity. It could be said that without the protection of the Great Deku Tree, the Lost Woods fog is slowly retaking the village, reverting it back into a part of the Lost Woods. You can see that the deep fog has now taken over the village as adult Link. Usually the fog is the reason why many people go missing in the Lost Woods in the first place, as this has been shown to happen in Breath of the Wild. In The Wind Waker, following the era of the Hero of Time, Fado was born and assumed the role as the Sage of Wind, and he worked with the King of Hyrule directly. The Kokiri Fado from Wind Waker was the past conductor of the Wind Waker itself in order to retain the Master Sword's power to repel evil. So being the Sage of Wind, it made sense as to why Fado was given use of the Wind Waker. The Great Flood was actually the reason why the Kokiri adapted to take the form of Koroks, in order to travel across the Great Sea. So if the Great Flood never happened, they might have just still stuck to their human forms. The Kokiri utilize their fairies in many ways. For one, they are able to speak in long distances to each other using their fairies. This is shown at the beginning of Ocarina of Time when Fado, who is on the rooftop, tells Link to use his fairy as a way of communication. So besides just being a basic tutorial on how to use Navi, it is indeed a fact that fairies can be used as communicators and project their partner's voice through long distances. In The Wind Waker, Tetra Stone might have a similar power to that of a fairy. In Triforce Heroes, you can receive Kokiri clothing, which gives Link the ability to shoot 3 arrows at once. Within the Kokiri tribe, you're not considered a true Kokiri unless you have a fairy. The Kokiri don't actually accept adults who have fairies. Link's iconic green tunic is Kokiri made for males. The males wear distinctive floppy green hats, while the females wear headbands. The Kokiri seem to be dependent on agricultural work, as many farming supplies can be found within Link's house, as well as fruits that are present on Link's table within his house. The Kokiri make no effort to make contact with the Hylians, but the Hylians refer to them as forest fairies and not Kokiri. There are Kokiri with blonde hair and red hair. Despite the Kokiri being blessed with eternal youth, they are still mortal and can still die. It was mentioned in the game that Kokiri will die if they leave the forest. This is because the Kokiri will age in places where the Deku Tree's power does not reach. This doesn't mean they will immediately die though, it just means that their biological age process will resume forward once more. But after the Great Deku Tree sprout is born, the Kokiri became able to venture outside the forest safely, which is seen in the ending of Ocarina of Time where they take part in the celebration in Lon Lon Ranch. The monsters that attacked Kokiri village are said to have come from the Forest Temple, according to Asaria's actions by going there to put a stop to the attack. But instead, she awakened as a sage there for the actions that she took. After Link defeats Queen Goma and leaves Kokiri Forest, Mito convinces the other Kokiri that the Great Deku Tree withered away and died because Link did something wrong to him. Even Fado later resented Link and became angry with him for what he did to the Great Deku Tree. So the Kokiri resented Link's actions even though in the end he saved all of Hyrule. Link ended up putting the Kokiri through a whole mess after his departure. Not only did the Great Deku Tree die out, Seria has now disappeared and became a sage, monsters invaded the village, and without the Deku Tree's magic to protect them, they would eventually, die. When Link returns as an adult, Fado warns Link that the people who become lost in the Lost Woods become Stalfos, which is exactly the fate that awaited our hero of time. Despite Fado's minor role in Ocarina of Time, Fado has a rather noticeable appearance. She has her own model, which is unusual for any, character that's not a Hylian or has an important role in the game. She also has different lines from the other Kokiri, and she mysteriously disappears later on in the game. So yeah, Fado does get a lot of attention for her character, but she still holds no significance to the game whatsoever. Fado does appear in some of the early Ocarina of Time screenshots and is thereby indicated to be created about the same time as Saria, considering that her model back then looks very unique. It is also known that at one point there was going to be a wind temple. The only remaining hint is that there is a wind-themed challenge for the forest barrier in Gandorf's castle. It is currently believed that Fado was to be the Sage of Wind, but she was scrapped along with the Wind Temple, and in its place you had Saria and the Forest Temple. Even though Fado's role as a sage was scrapped in Ocarina of Time, it was later reused in the Wind Waker. Fado, along with Mito, were named after musical terms. Tengo believes himself to be a Kokiri and is obsessed by fairies, though no fairy has yet come to him, and he does dress in green in order to mimic the Kokiri clothing. Not sure if he's just interested in the Kokiri or maybe he just wants eternal youth, because that guy is getting old. The Kokiri symbol can be seen at the doors of the Forbidden Woods in the Wind Waker and the Forest Temple in Twilight Princess, and also on the Shell of Crake, the boss that is found in the Temple of Courage in the Phantom Hourglass. During an interview with Miyamoto, prior to the release of Ocarina of Time, he did state that Kokiri disappear when they reach a certain age. Then the next generation of Kokiri are born abruptly. He also stated that Link would also disappear at some point in the game. Even though this hasn't actually happened in the game, maybe he was talking about something happening to Link in the future, like maybe going missing in the Lost Woods or becoming the hero Shade. One can only speculate though. According to the official Japanese site, the Kokiri clothing from Triforce Heroes actually contains the soul of a Kokiri. The Kokiri Forest exists as the Faron Woods in Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, and as the Forest Haven in the Wind Waker. Even though the Lost Woods and the Great Deku Tree completely shot the mark in Breath of the Wild's map, it is no longer located in the Faron province. And finally, if Kokiri were once Hylians, then how come the Great Deku Tree's magic didn't affect Link's aging? Considering that he is a Hylian, despite that, he still has been growing since he was a baby. Maybe the Deku Tree is able to choose who his magic affects, because he needed Link to actually grow up and become the hero of Hyrule. And yeah, that pretty much about does it for the facts on the Kokiri village, and the whole Faron province that makes up that entire forest. But yeah, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next upload. Take care.